Hey, we're all in our mansions. Yes, the house on the hill. It's Sigmund Bloom here, live, the Audible. I had to make a little switch up, so some of you that had the old link, hopefully you made it over here to the new link tonight. Gene Bramwell is on assignment. And I heard from a good source that Gene actually earlier this week went to the home run derby in Cincinnati with his sons. I saw a good picture of that. I get to grill him about that next week. Cecil Lammy is on assignment at this moment, but should be joining us by the end of our hour here. We'll be expanding back to 2 hours. 2 hours is coming. We're going to wish we had a lot more than 2 hours to talk about things. Once training camps get rolling, you got Matt Waldman, and this is another edition of Between Two Matts. But since I already talked to Matt Williamson this week, I had to get out now officially with his happiest man in the world avatar on Twitter, Matt Harmon. But first, I've got to say, we had last week Jeff Rosenberger, better known as Five-ish, and one of the things that's made Five-ish an essential part of our community here is his Photoshop skills. He's a really excellent. He takes some of these ideas that just kind of drop out of our brains during these shows, and he's turned them into things that will last forever. And if you missed it last week, we had the all-time moment where I opened the floor and I told Jeff, say anything you want now. Here you go. And he apologized, kind of, to Gene. So now we have the man who is, like you said, Matt, you've made it, Matt Harmon. You've made it. You've been the subject of a Photoshop spree.
I know.
So, Mr. Peanut, Matt Harmon. How's it now that you're on the other side and you're slumming with those of us who are not behind the shield?
Well, I've got my two monitors set up here, my personal computer where you guys are on, and then my work computer, so I can actually, do official business while I'm slacking around with you guys.
Yeah, you've got like the red, white, and blue phone that goes right to Goodell,
Yeah, exactly. Well, he and I might text a little bit during this hangout, so if I miss a few questions, just be patient with me.
No, I understand. If you do rub elbows with him, ask him about, I think the name of the bar was The Landmark. Roger Goodell went to Washington and Jefferson College in Washington, Pennsylvania, my stomping grounds. A lot of my family's from Washington. My aunt runs the Hampton Inn there on Mertland Avenue. I'm from Bentleyville, but he was a bartender. And he told people back then, I think, the story that my uncle says, that Roger the bartender would tell people that he was going to eventually be the GM of an NFL team. Well,
I'm just waiting to see if Principal Rooney. I'm just waiting to see if Principal Rooney is actually going to figure out how to bust Ferris Brady.
Yeah, right. This is save Ferris. He's sick. Oh man, yeah. No, that's going to be an interesting
9 times.
Thing. You broached it. So you know what, Waldman? You opened the can of worms. You broached it. So do you buy this logic now that Greg Hardy, his suspension was reduced to 4 games by Harold Henderson, not by Goodell, who's going to be hearing the appeal for Brady? Do you buy that logic that a lot of people advanced, including Albert Breer, who said way back in May that Hardy's suspension should be reduced significantly? He had an immediate reaction, oh yeah, now that Hardy's down to 4 games, there's no way Brady is going to stand at 4 games. Does that fly in your head, Matt Waldman?
Well, in my head and what I view common sense to be, I certainly view that idea as if they're going to take what we have as testimony about what happened with Hardy and Hardy's girlfriend, and we're gonna only give him 4 games for that. Then I certainly think that for the Wells report, which is problematic in so many different ways, that it only makes sense that they would do that. But then again, this is the NFL. This is the arbitrary kind of behavior that we've seen from the commissioner in the past, of where it's more about who knows what's going through, why they're doing what they're doing. So the NFL has not been known for common sense in recent years when it comes to the commissioner's office. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what kind of mental gymnastics they go through to justify Tom Brady having a longer suspension than Greg Hardy.
And as it stands right now, I believe that Brady, I was looking at the schedule here, where I think that Brady and Hardy might face each other in each of their first game back, depending on whether his suspension, Brady's that is reduced, because New England's fourth game of the year is Dallas, and Dallas's fifth game of the year is New England. So New England game will be Hardy's first game back. If
What's that character? What's that character in Game of Thrones? Who's the Hound's brother? Who's like the king?
The Mountain.
The Mountain.
I think Roger Goodell needs a Mountain character.
Yeah, right.
Then he can like get rid of Tom Brady and Greg Hardy all in one swoop, and he doesn't even have to do anything from his office. He can just watch from an owner's box.
No, like all good Bond villains, he needs a henchman. But now I'm not going to ask
you. His leg. I'm sorry. Okay.
No. I'm not going to ask you, Matt Harmon, to comment on the Brady suspension. I'm not going to put you in any sort of conflict of interest.
I had my company line all ready to go too.
No. There is no such thing as company lines. Everybody that works at NFL is free to speak their minds. But no, I want to ask you. We went back and forth. Something that I brought up a couple of times on the show on the couch. Again, recently this week with Matt Williamson, was trying to reconcile the idea that Drew Brees is going to be a 4,500 or 5,000 yard passer again this year without Jimmy Graham, without Kenny Stills. You and I exchanged some DMs about this as you're looking at this for some upcoming work at NFL.com. What were your findings? Did I lose Matt Harmon?
Yeah. No, sorry, you cut out there for a second. Just about the Saints and the projections.
Yeah,
and
just trying to make it all add up and being honest about your expectations, either adjusting players up to meet your expectations for Brees or adjusting Brees down to meet your expectations for this new offense.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. I was sitting out there, like, just writing, like, scribbling it. I think I sent you a picture of the little scribbles I was doing on my notepad. And it's, if you're going to project Brees to be like a 4,900 yard passer like he was last year, that means that even if you give Cooks 1,200 yards, Josh Hill 600 yards, Colston 1,000 yards, and then Spiller 800 yards, which I think for all of those players are aggressive projections, especially a few of them. That still leaves 1,325 yards just out in the ether. So that, like you say, and like you said a couple times, that means that either Brees is going to come way down from what we're used to seeing, or somebody's going to have to, some rando is going to have a weird season. Yeah, Nick Toon or Shantavius Jones or Ben Watson or something. Or that means that like somebody like C.J. Spiller is going to have a big year.
Yeah, like over 1,000 receiving yards as a running back or something inconceivable.
Like you have to have a Marshall Faulk season as a pass catching running back, which is that's a tough thing to project if you're being honest with yourself.
And he has to stay healthy to do that. And so does Colston, and so does Cooks. And remember, Colston's a guy we've been waiting for the other shoe to drop forever with his knees. And so as I put when we were DMing back and forth, you can see that the load-bearing parts of this passing game are not the most confidence-breeding when you try to think of them all hooking up. Is that a kitty cat?
Yeah, I've got two here. My daughter actually has brought her cats back to our house for the summer. So this one his name's Cato, but I've nicknamed him Clowny.
Oh, Cato as in like Cato Kalin? Cato.
I don't think Cato Kalin.
Well, he was named after, but he was actually named after the sidekick for the Green Lantern. Is that right?
Yeah. This is Cato, but I call him Clowny. And then the one on the couch here, I call him the Orange Anvil. So.
Oh, nice. The Anvil, Jim Anvil Neidhart.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right?
Yeah.
So going back to this New Orleans thing for a second. Matt Waldman. Nick Toon, since I mentioned him, as you put it eloquently, Matt Harmon, a rando from this offense. No, but he is the number 3 receiver. Now, what's interesting is Toon was drafted in the 4th round, and hey, a 4th round pick of a wide receiver is not too shabby. I mean, it means that team probably had him as a 2nd or 3rd rounder, a second-day pick. This is a good pass offense. Certainly in our surface dynasty analysis, when we see Nick Toon land in New Orleans, we're like, okay. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm listening. I think he had a foot problem his first year. Last year, I was not impressed with him at all, and he got lots of opportunity. What does the RSP file up here for you, Mr. Waldman, have about Nick Toon, and then how's it been updated?
I would say that I liked the idea of him as a potential successor to Marcus Colston when he first arrived in the league, because he wasn't a guy that you were going to look at and say he gets open against press coverage deep. That's not what his strength is. He's a long strider who has build-up speed, but he can catch the ball in traffic, or at least he did at Wisconsin. He was kind of more of a between-the-hash type of player who could run reasonable routes, but still had more to improve in terms of reading coverage and getting and really getting open, especially against man. So when you look at what he's done now, there just really hasn't been enough opportunities to see him against top competition and say, here's a guy who looks like he would improve. So when I look at this, I mean, I agree with you guys with this offense. I have Breeze at about 4,370 yards. That's what I have him projected at, and that means guys like, Spiller, I have at about 450. I have Colston at about 800. Cooks at a shade under 1,100. Tune at about 300. And then it's just split up where it's like, it's like the old Meacham, Henderson, Lance Moore, whoever they throw on the field between Jones, Coleman, Morgan, Jalen Sanders, and Josh Morgan, where they all give them somewhere between 100 and 200 and a touchdown or two, and that's unless one of them shocks you. That's about it. And then you're looking at Josh Hill and Ben Watson, and between them, I think you're looking at probably about 950 yards between if you add both of them together, but not in 10 touchdowns. But it's going to be split, and I think it's more of a 60-40 split in favor of Hill.
Yeah, it's not optimism. This is I got a good question from somebody on Twitter that asked, if projections are sort of a best guess, how can projections really help with your draft? And this goes back to something Mike Clay and I talked about on the couch a few weeks back, where accuracy for projections is totally different than making a ranking to guide you in your draft. And I think that what's the value of projections if you don't use them as a ranking? Well, the value is it makes you honest. It makes you have to keep your expectations for a unit, a running game, a passing game, an offense, a team, because the defense feeds into this. The game scripts you anticipate feed into your expectations for the offense as a whole, and the running game and passing game as a whole, and then how that pie gets split up. And this is part of what I'm going to really hit this hard as I have been all offseason. That's what keeps leading me back to this whole offense as a high-level sorter. And then where New Orleans, you used to break ties in favor of guys from New Orleans. You wanted a piece of that offense. Maybe they're dropping down. And Matt Williams and I have explored this idea of like their restaurants, like the 5-star cuisine, as he put it. They're not 5-star cuisine. I'm not even sure they're 4-star cuisine. We're definitely not dining at Galatoire's or any of the places, Giacomo's. That look it up, folks, if you go to New Orleans. Okay,
they can still make a mean po' boy, though.
They can, yes. They can get all that debris, all that good stuff. Yeah. We got to get them to move the football guys' retreat to New Orleans just once, just 1 year. Although we'll only get to do it once, because there's no way anybody will ever want to be back there again.
No, I was gonna say.
Talk about getting lost in the fun house.
Talk about losing half the company.
I've got stories. I got lots of stories that I will not. If you ever catch me off the air, ask me to tell some stories about 1998 Mardi Gras.
It'll be called Football Guy at the end of that one.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just Joe Bryant standing there by himself.
Yeah, just a little excerpt from one of my stories. I swear, when I was trying to get the money out of the ATM to bail my friend out of jail, I swear the numbers started to move. Like the 12 numbers were changed. That's just one little. Like, I'm just dropping you in at a random moment in my Mardi Gras story. Okay,
that we're off the rails.
Okay, look. Let's do something fun with this. I had an idea with this because it's been a slow news week. When C shows up, we'll talk franchise tags because he's going to talk to Marius Thomas and we'll talk Dez and so on. But I'm going to do something fun with this. I want to toss this idea out there and see how this goes, guys, because it's 9 days until the Steelers and the Vikings. Isn't that the Hall of Fame game this year? Steelers-Vikings? 9 days until they report to camp.
Oh, okay.
But still, 9 days until they report to camp. We're in single digits until these Latrobe, get some Rolling Rock, go to St. Vincent, beautiful country. So I'm writing up my training camp preview division by division, just going over the questions. As Matt said, I might need to see a doctor with all this burning. Just questions that as Matt and Williams and I were talking, like we have, as he put it, you're making mountains out of molehills all off season. And now we're going to actually start putting some data or filling in some of these blanks, or at least bringing it into a little tighter focus. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass around where one person says what is one of the things. I'll just pick a team out, okay, and I'll toss it to you and say, what's your biggest question that comes to mind that you're going to be watching in training camp and preseason for that team? And then the next person is going to tell us what they think the most likely outcome is going to be, okay? So first, Matt Waldman, and Harmon, I want you to serve up your prediction on this, and I'll toss you a team, Matt Waldman. The team is Philadelphia.
Team is Philadelphia. Okay. Then I would say the question that I have more than anything with this particular team is whether or not Zach Ertz is actually going to get over the hump and give all these fantasy folks who are absolutely enamored with him that top 3 to 5 ranking that people project him to be one day instead of being in the 9 to 15 range.
All right, Harmon. Zach Ertz, on the other side of this, when we get to week 1, is training camp going to make us in preseason more excited, less excited about Ertz?
It might make us more excited, but I don't think it's justified, just simply because I've never been crazy about Ertz as a player, and I just don't think there's going to be enough targets to go around. I think they have 2 pretty solid receivers there. It's going to be a run-heavy offense, and I'm not on the Ertz bandwagon this year simply because I just don't think there's a lot of targets to go around.
Have you ever done reception perception for a tight end?
I get that question a lot, and I've never been able to do that because some of the routes would be different and everything. So and there was so much on my plate this offseason.
No, I'm just curious because we're talking about it because certainly, like you said, it's one part of a game. It's only one part of their game, and it's a different context and framework than when you're watching wide receivers, slot receivers, outside receivers, over and over again. It's just fascinating.
I didn't mean to have excuses.
No. Yeah, right. They're not going to buy those excuses at NFL.com, son.
Yeah.
No, seriously. No, but it's just interesting because I think that Ertz is one of those players that it's so funny. I think you see the type for Philadelphia that Ertz is another one of these guys who is really hyper competent at his job, but not necessarily a creative player or a player that adds value to his targets or otherwise makes plays outside of the range of what you ask him to do. And those kinds of players, this probably tells a lot about me as a person. That I just I'd rather take Jordan Cameron. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this: I heard today I was watching one of the Football Life shows, and I think it was Michael Irvin saying how Jimmy Johnson or it was Dave Wannstedt saying Jimmy Johnson says, it's when you ever have a chance to pick a player who does things that can't be coached, that's what you do.
Right.
But I look at Chip Kelly's teams. And I wonder, when I look at Zach Ertz, one of his troubles that I've always seen is the ability to catch a ball in contested coverage and do that consistently. So, if Philly, the downside to Philly could be, are they the anti-Jimmy Johnson team? Or is Chip Kelly the anti-Jimmy Johnson, where it's like these guys will do everything that's coached, but don't ask them to do anything that's not coached?
Right, which is why Marcus Mariota would just have made coming out of the system. He just would have made so much sense. But it does. Well, what it comes down to, and this is probably what Chip Kelly would say. Exactly, you guys get me. Does the play, call, and design work? Then the play's supposed to work. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. But you're really making the engagement between the coach and the opposing team with the players as pawns, really, which is different than what we've seen. But going back to something really quick, because you got me thinking about this, Waldman, did you see some of the stuff, and you already knew all these stories, some of the great Kenny Stabler stories about, or just the Raiders in general, and how Chip Kelly would have responded to having those kinds of guys playing for him?
Oh, I love it because it's like I really do enjoy watching what's going on in Philadelphia, and I'm rooting for Chip Kelly to succeed. I'm just not rooting for the NFL to take Chip Kelly by storm in terms of that philosophy and try and spread it everywhere, because I'm actually philosophically against Chip Kelly if that's what his philosophy is. And I'm not saying he's not going to get players who are creative, but he does seem to like guys that maybe just follow the rules. But yeah, you look at these Ken Stabler, John Madden, kind of like, do whatever you want. John Madden's like, look, okay, yeah, sure, what are we going to do? And he's like, this is how we'll just go in there and do it. I looked in his eyes and and I looked in the snake's eyes and decided to go this route. I mean, to me, I'm doing this series at my blog of players, of a team to defend the planet from aliens. It's just like my fun comic book summer movie blockbuster, like writer's project that we have folks in. And to me, John Madden would be an excellent candidate as a coach to defend the planet because he, with a bunch of creative players, he's just like, yeah, okay, well, let's adjust to what's going on the fly, and he's just a little bit off, just like all the players, at least that I'm putting on my team. So.
Yes, and let me just put it this way. I just looked up an article from Modern Drunkard magazine that includes some mentions of those 70s Raiders team. It's an article about great athletes who also happen to be great consumers of alcohol. Okay, so
they would
moving
never make it in today's NFL.
Probably not. Probably it was it was Wild West. The whole 70s. We had a little back and forth on Twitter about this because that movie Roar. Look it up. Just look up the movie Roar. I'm not even going to get into it. Okay, I'm going to toss this over to you, Harmon. Matt, you're going to give me your question about the team, and then I'll give you my most likely scenario to whatever that is. And since Matt Waldman talked about the spread of Chip Kellyism, let's look at one of those offenses that is becoming a Chip Kelly-ish offense in Miami.
Oh, man. Well, this is a question that I've been grappling with the last couple of days, and one that I wrote about a while ago for Football Guys is how is the wide receiver pecking order going to, predictable wide receiver question, how is the pecking order in that wide receiver situation going to sort itself out?
There's a lot of ways to tease this one apart because I was just looking at this earlier today too, and 4 different receivers. Well, Brandon Gibson had like 480 or 490 snaps, but basically 4 different receivers had at least 500 snaps in this offense last year. What it told you right off the bat is Kenny Stills or Greg Jennings, whoever it is that's going to be the odd man out, because I do expect that once Devontae Parker's on the field, he's going to bubble up into the top 3 and be on the field most of the time. And we saw last year at Louisville, what was he out for, like 6 weeks, 7 weeks? And he came back on, and he wasn't the player he was pre-injury when he came back, but he was still extremely impactful and mentally ready to go. And I think you're going to see something similar there. But the Stills and Jennings are, I think, the variables where one of them will probably get 800, 900 snaps. One will get, so between Parker and Stills and Jennings, one is going to be with Landry, who, by the way, only had 683 snaps last year. He was kind of eased in and wasn't on the field. I think you're going to see him lining up more outside. I think you're going to see him as the centerpiece player. I think that he is going to be the Dolphins' fantasy wide receiver you want to own. But I would expect that we see this situation fluid. I think that coming out of training camp, the veteran Jennings is going to be the number 2 receiver. Stills running more clear out routes, and then as Parker is ready, you're going to see Jennings scaled back to the 4 receiver, and Parker become the 2 receiver. So, but with the 4 receivers in the Chip Kelly style, we could see from game to game a different player as the lead receiver, with again Jarvis Landry getting those 5 and 6 catches every game as the constant. But I want to ask you again, because I think we may have already talked about Landry on the show. I'm not sure, but you may just be going over the same ground, Mr. Harmon. But you did the reception perception on Landry, and it was funny because you're like, well, what do you expect? This is what we think he looks like. This is what he looks like. But as I've argued, I think the fact that he's an underwhelming player with respect to highlights or gaudy plays that show off those special things that only he could do, he's not necessarily that kind of receiver, conceals his fantasy value. How did you feel about his fantasy value after you broke him down in reception perception?
I mean, the one thing that stood out to me was just that Jarvis Landry is exactly the type of player that Ryan Tannehill likes and needs in a way, because he just really he likes to work through the middle. He likes to have a short, consistent option to dump the ball off to, and that's Landry every time because he's open on those short little crossing routes. So for his fantasy value, I was pretty convinced that he could have 80 to 90 catches a season, push 1,000 yards. I think the fact that he averaged, under 10 yards a catch, people are kind of writing it in pen that he's going to do that every year now. But I don't necessarily buy that because, like you said, I think he can win outside. But I also thought he can make the tough catches. You talk about highlights. I mean, he can make tough catches in traffic. I mean, I know I was looking for videos on our website the other day, and there was a video of him in mini camps, like grabbing a pass one-handed, without even thinking about it. Really good. He has really good concentration and everything. And I feel really good about his fantasy value. I think he's like you said, he's the easiest one to project for me. I don't think his role is going to change much from a rookie, but I think he's going to get more snaps and more opportunities. Probably be the one that is going to gain targets and not lose targets just because they brought in all these other guys because his role is so set in stone.
Yeah, and of course we haven't even mentioned Jordan Cameron. I mentioned him earlier talking about Ertz, but he's another guy that could really put a stamp on this pass offense if he stays healthy. Mm-hmm. But in Landry, I think you point out something very important there. Then again, I'm going to cite Evan Silva, who said, "Hey, he can't be that bad of an athlete if he averaged 28 yards per kick return."
Mm-hmm.
And his role it's not static. And I want to say that he was a little banged up coming into the pre-draft season last year, so. He's a player that's just going to get better and better. Okay, Matt Waldman, because I'm going to ask the question and you're going to answer it, I'll let you pick the team.
All right. No, you just pick. Go ahead. I like the randomness.
Favoritism.
Oh, man. Well, I'm trying to think because I'm going to probably go over something.
Harmon pick the team.
Yeah, Harmon, you pick the team. Let's make it through. Yeah.
How about the Bucks?
Oh, man. Well, see, I could answer one that I think for a lot of people is a big question that for me is not, which is how is Jameis Winston going to hit the ground running, or is he going to stumble? And we've talked about this enough on the show, and I got to give a tip of the cap to my man Matt Williamson again, because some of the friction I've run into on my optimism for Jameis Winston is only Andrew Luck and Cam Newton have thrown for 4,000 passing yards in the history of the NFL as a rookie. And I asked Matt Williamson that, do you care about that? He said, I don't need a history lesson. Anyway, so here's my question. Here's my question. Austin Seferian-Jenkins. We know what his potential is. We also know he's been oft injured. Is he going to be Jordan Reed at the end of the year, or is he going to be Dwayne Allen at the end of the year?
That's a great question, and I kind of wish you asked me the Jameis Winston one. No. The thing about Seferian-Jenkins is this. I mean, I get the whole idea of he's a big guy and he's fluid in the way that he moves, and certainly he can make nice catches at the sideline, but I don't think the Gronkowski comparisons are as I don't think people meant to make them the way that they made them be, and then you have fans who take them to the nth degree and go, yes, he's the next Rob Gronkowski. I also find that this is not always the case, but I have found that Tampa Bay seems to be the place where everyone goes, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, he's uncoverable. He's just doing unbelievably awesome things. And this is me, the fantasy police, trying to catch these people, and through Austin here. They're trying to escape through Austin here to say that because Seferian-Jenkins, I don't see it. I've got him projected fairly low, actually, as a kind of a 35 catch, 345 yard, 3-touchdown guy. Now that saying, when we talk about projections, you also have to make room for upside. And I think that you always have to look at when you're making projections like this and say, okay, well, I've got him at 345 yards. I also have Winston at 3,750 yards as a passer. This is the guy. Jenkins is the guy where you could up that ante easily and get Winston to 400. So if to me, it's just a matter of can the tight end depth chart for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get open a little bit more often and stay healthy and get in the sync. And if they do, then you see that upside where I think Jenkins could be maybe a 600-yard receiver and have 6 to 8 touchdowns and then crack that top 7 in fantasy leagues. But I need to see proof of it, because all I have heard the past 2 years is how great this guy is running on grass in shells. but not really in games. So, and what I saw in games was, yeah, he can dive for the ball. He can make a catch in tight coverage. He's really good at the sideline, kind of like Troy Nicholas was at Notre Dame, the Cardinals tight end. But I haven't seen I'm going to break tackles and run through you, run away from you. It's more of I'm going to carry you a few yards, and then it's on the ground after that. Minimal. He's not that kind of a huge play threat that Gronkowski is. And again, here comes the cops because now they're heading back to Tampa.
And on the cat, speaking of like exterior things, on the cat front, Matt Waldman, I thought that almost like that was like a preemptive strike against Charlie, who we have not seen yet. And I think that
Charlie is in his crate. I hate to discuss it. He had a bath this afternoon, so he's drying off.
No, these cats aren't Zook, Bloom. These cats are wimps. I've got a bird's nest of these like northern mockingbirds that are giving birth in a tree in my backyard, and they have dive bombed the hell out of these two cats that they want to go outside, that they won't go outside. They just stare in the window and cry Yeah, I mean Zook. I'm glad I don't have Zook because he probably would have brought one of those birds home.
Yeah, so, poor little babies. Well, and much like Mr. Harmon, if Charlie got a new coif, then you have to keep that intact. You can't mess with the hair thing. If you got bathed, then I understand. Exactly. But the Charlie avatar was just tremendous.
That was shouts to Rumper Johnny for that one. That was awesome.
So getting back to the matter at hand in Austin Seferian-Jenkins, I mean, Waldman, here, try this on for size. A rich man's Gavin Escobar.
Yeah, I would. No, I guess so. I think Escobar. I think Escobar is a poor man's Tony Gonzalez. So a very poor man's Tony Gonzalez.
Right.
But I would say Seferian-Jenkins is a very poor man's Rob Gronkowski, or maybe a middle class Troy Nicholas. I'm not,
sure.
Somewhere
he is a little rugged, but with the thing, he is more of a finesse player despite being massive, and he does have, like you said, the fluid athleticism and ball skills. He's a natural pass catcher, but he's been hurt so constantly for the last 2 years, and I just wonder. And another under the radar thing that happened there is when the Patriots released Tim Wright.
Yep.
The Bucs swooped right in and got him. So if Seferian-Jenkins can't stay healthy, I mean, Matt, is it crazy to say that? Hey, if Seferian-Jenkins gets hurt like he has been in the last 2 years, and Tim Wright, I mean, would we project Tim Wright 90% of Jenkins, 100% of Seferian-Jenkins?
Yeah, I think we absolutely would, because this would be kind of the Nick O'Leary pick of what type of player. And the thing about Winston that you need to understand is, while he may throw as many interceptions as he throws touchdowns this year, because I am anticipating that Peyton Manning-like high interception rookie year, I do believe that one of the things that Winston does so well is check the ball down and create on the move and throw guys open who are your backs and your tight ends. So I would say whoever is going to be the pass catching back in this offense is going to get plenty of opportunities to make some really dynamic plays with the help of Winston, targeting him downfield after evading, a pass rush. So it's I think that tight end is going to be another option where you're going to see Winston thrive. I think that, if the tight end can be reliable for him, and I think that Wright is just good enough that, you could see Wright get 30 to 45 receptions in this offense if Austin Seferian-Jenkins doesn't pan out.
Or just take enough of the edge off of Seferian-Jenkins' upside game to game to keep him from being one of those breakout tight ends. Okay, let's do another round of this. This is cool because it gives us some chances to jump off into other topics too. So again, Waldman, you're going to give your biggest question from a team, and Harmon, you're going to answer it. Let's go back to the AFC. Let's talk about a team that is not a sexy team, so we don't talk about them that much. The Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, so my question is this: what I'm want to know in camp and really in the preseason is, can Jeremy Maclin be a more reliable player than Dwayne Bowe, and would that spell bigger plays from Alex Smith?
Yes, I think he can be a more reliable player than Dwayne Bowe, And I mean, I did Bo's reception perception, and that's really wasn't a hard standard to beat. His play's definitely fallen off the last 2 years, but that's also coincided with this quarterback. You know, the same guy that Jeremy Maclin's going to be playing with. But I think that the hate on Maclin has gone too far. Where I see him falling really late in some drafts. I think that he could still hover. I mean, he's going to see volume, that's for sure. I mean, there's no other guys there that are ready to compete with him right away. I like Chris Conley as a project player, but I don't think he's ready to step right on the field right away. Albert Wilson's still interesting, and there's obviously Travis Kelce who could lead the team in targets, but I still think Maclin will get enough. And there'll be, short, intermediate passes where I think that Maclin can make some easy receptions and he can be a reliable presence for them, even though he's not as good as what he put out numbers-wise last year. I still think that he could catch, somewhere around 80 passes, be a reliable, short to intermediate receiver. And he does definitely have the speed and big play ability to make Alex Smith look like he's taking more chances and make more aggressive plays, but I don't necessarily. I think Smith just kind of is who he is at this point, and they've found a formula that works in Kansas City. It works enough to get them in playoff contention after having the number 1 overall pick a couple years ago. So I frankly don't see Smith changing a lot, but I think Maclin can complement him in ways that that benefit the offense.
So a bunch of things come to mind here as subtopics on this. One is I think you're right that Maclin. So there's a big divide here, right? If you're in a more casual league where some folks might be drafting more on ADP that is mainstream or just looking at last year's stats, then Maclin's going to go too high still. He's going to go in the 4th or 5th round, because he was a wide receiver 1 last year in Philadelphia. But in more shark-infested waters, you may see him fall to the 7th or 8th round. And you see him, if I'm seeing him at the same part of the draft as guys like Deshaun Jackson or even the Minnesota duo of Charles Johnson and Mike Wallace, or Michael Floyd and John Brown, or these guys all have very similar profiles. It's Torrey Smith, Rashad Perryman. It's going to be heaven or hell week to week, but when it's good, it's going to be really good. And I think Maclin belongs in that group, and I have enough faith in Alex Smith to keep him as a solid pick in that group. Here's a question, and Waldman, I'll get you on this one first. Should it matter to us that Andy Reid knows Maclin really well? I mean, they spent many years together in Philadelphia before the Chip Kelly era. Should that give us confidence that this will end up on the optimistic side of our range of possibilities?
I think so, because when you look at what he knows and how he works with quarterbacks, he and Alex Smith should be able to work together to figure out ways to feature Maclin. And apparently we have a guy that likes offense, or maybe doesn't like quarterbacks. We'll find out if he's in training here. But
Anvil.
This is the orange anvil. Yes, here's the orange anvil, everybody. There we go. Bob, there we go. But I would say that when it comes to Maclin, I think that because he is a better route runner than Bo in terms of consistency and what he can do as a student of the game and the way that they mesh with Andy Reid, that I think Alex Smith is going to welcome this kind of consistency. It's vanilla. I think Dwayne Bowe as an athlete, I would rather have Dwayne Bowe as an athlete if he was playing his A game than Jeremy Maclin. I'd rather have him breaking tackles after the catch, making plays in contested coverage, because Dwayne Bowe in his A game is closer to Terrell Owens in my mind. But the problem is that we have rarely seen his A game unless Todd Haley has lit a fire under his butt. So when you look at Maclin, he doesn't need that kind of incentive, and that's going to help, because I think he's much more that banker, accountant, reliable kind of receiver that reports into work every day and just does his job, doesn't need to be patted on the fanny or lit a fire under him, and just gets the TPS reports done. Yeah. And I think that Alex Smith as that kind of a manager who doesn't want to have a bunch of drama in his office is really going to appreciate that, and they will end up working well together. So I see 75 receptions, 1,150 yards, 7 touchdowns for Maclin, and think that that works out well just because of the fact that they're not frustrated. And Alex Smith, to me, seems like the kind of guy, by his play, that would be that kind of more passive-aggressive, vanilla. If he doesn't like the guy and trust him, he's not going to yell at him on the bench and tell him that he needs to get his act in gear. He's just going to stop going to him, or he's going to hesitate when he sees a guy like Dwayne Bowe open and maybe not make the full read that he should and go, I'm going to put it up there, in contrast to a guy like, Kurt Warner with Larry Fitzgerald going, I don't care if you're double covered, I'm going to target you in your prime. And I think that that's the difference there.
So, Harmon, you looked at every route that Dwayne Bowe ran. Does Alex Smith have were we too hard on him? Is his reputation unearned? I mean, did you see things that match, and did you see some throws that he passed on that he could have made, or otherwise saw, as you're seeing the other half of that picture watching the receiver, a meek quarterback?
Well, hold on, we got a stud alert here.
Yeah,
but
right.
So I'm a little distracted. But no, but I mean, I think it's tough with. Shit, I don't know how much this is the question now.
I forgot what I was talking about. It's the long hair. It's the
Harmon sees Parker Stevenson lifting weights, and it's like all over from here.
Well, and it's the hair game. See, when Matt Harmon is in the booth, the whole hair game. As I'm losing my hair,
I should just log out if Cecil's gonna come in looking this good.
So it's gonna be that kind of show tonight. Okay, so before we move on, nothing meek about Cecil Lammey, but what did you see, if anything, that was meek about Alex Smith?
Well, I just think it's tough to judge, particularly when he's throwing to Dwayne Bowe, because I just don't think they're the type of guys that mesh well together. I mean, Waldman talked about Bowe's ability in contested situations, and Smith is a little meek in that he doesn't want to throw into areas where there's a lot of defenders, where a guy's well covered, and Dwayne Bowe is kind of that guy who needs the confidence of his quarterback to just kind of toss it up and he'll go get it. I mean, because he's still a talented player, but Smith just isn't the type of quarterback to exploit that. So I think that those two were kind of a bad marriage to begin with. So it's kind of hard to judge.
Sure.
Who Smith is when he's throwing to that particular wide receiver.
It's going to be interesting. Yeah, well, so there is a big reveal coming with Smith and Maclin and its downstream effects. I've got a request for you. Are you taking any perception requests, Matt?
No promises, but you can request
sure.
it.
So, because on the subject of Dwayne Bowe, and I brought this up on the Fantasy Angle of Pursuit, I think is the name of it. Dennis Dunbar and Kyle Roberts' show. Taylor Gabriel, if you were going to go deep. And someone was already asking when we're going to do our snorkel and scuba, and I think Matt Williamson brought it up too. It's like, we should do that just like once a month for fun. But Taylor Gabriel is one of those players that feels like a snorkel scuba kind of guy, and I would just be curious when you put him through the Play-Doh Fun Factory of your mind, what comes out, because he's a player that has a lot of buzz. But I've heard someone named Cecil Lammey. Welcome, and how are things going in the Front Range?
I don't know if you heard me counting, but I just did 1,000. My arms hurt. Things going good. Liam's last 7-on-7 tournament of the year, so appreciate the help out in the show tonight. Bloom, as always, excited. Preseason watch list begins on Monday, so we're going to break out 32 teams, 32 episodes. Every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about them on the show. And it's back. I mean, I talked to Elway yesterday. I talked to Demarius tomorrow. And here in a matter of days, we'll be back at Dove Valley every day for training camp. It's here, and I can't wait.
It is. And I haven't said this. I should have. Football Guys paywall went up today. So you were enjoying a lot of things for free. And, of course, if you want to go into the shallow end, there's the Mobile Draft Dominator, the magazine, and all magazine content will eventually end up as part of your subscription if you're an Insider Pro, so don't worry about that. But if you are wading into the shallow end with the apps and you have an Apple device, the bundle right now, you get $2 off, $7.99 for both of those. And, of course, cracking FanDuel, cracking DraftKings, those ebooks, each over 150 pages. free with your Insider Pro subscription, and just wait until Daily Crusher. It's coming. Daily Crusher's coming. And that app is gonna. Oh boy, you guys don't know what you don't even. You're gonna get blindsided by that. Like you hit by like a Mack truck when you see what Simon Shepard and David Dodds have done there. Exciting times at football, guys. So Cease, and I guess Cease, should we resume? I mean, I feel like I'm confused because I started out as the host, and I'm not used to changing horses midstream. Did I use that correctly? A horse reference?
Midstream, though? I don't know.
Yeah,
you can't ride
Mid-river Power liked it.
You can't ride two horses with one ass, Sugar Plum.
Right.
I am happy, Matt, and I do blame you for this, Matt Waldman, that when you Google Cecil Lammey, I'm still number 2 behind. I'm the number 2 Cecil in the world behind Cecil Fielder. I'm okay with that. I actually know who that is, Bloom. But when it says Google people also searched, one of those, Matt Waldman, is Cecil Lammey Motorboat. So thanks for that. No, Bloom, you're the host, baby. You run the show.
So
ask
I'm gonna
me anything.
Yeah, I'm gonna toss it to you. So just give us the whole Demaryius Thomas and peripheral Dez Bryant drama from your point of view, covering the team in Denver, and thankfully Marty Magid and fax machines were not involved this time.
Right. There, I've got grease for my hair, but that's just for me, and I'm not an agent anyway. And I don't have a silver chain, not a gold chain. Point is, Demaryius is signed. Everything's good to go there. You're looking for Von Miller, the next big contract from the Denver Broncos. But here's the thing that you get the constant pushback from, that I'm trying to fight the lazy analysis of, well, it's a new system, and oh my God, and he has missed out on all this installation. He's been keeping track. Everything today is on Huddle. Like, if you want to watch my son's 7-on-7 tournament, just go to Huddle. You want to see his practice reps, go to Huddle. And everything's online. Broncos every player has an iPad instead of a playbook. All of the practice footage, all of the installation has been available to Demaryius. So it's not like he's going to show up on July 31st at Dove Valley and be like, what is this pigskin-shaped thing? He knows how to play the position. He's already well-versed. And Gary Kubiak said the most difficult position in his offense to learn is wide receiver because of the verbiage, because of how they change things at the line of scrimmage, and how it's essentially almost an option-based offense at times. So getting on the same page with Peyton Manning, I don't predict that will be a problem. There's people saying, again, wrong things about the Broncos offense, like Demaryius' numbers will go down. He'll get 100 catches for only the second time in his career. It's usually 92, 94. Last year it was above 100. He'll go 100 catches again this year in a Gary Kubiak system. Andre Johnson did it 5 times with Matt Schaub throwing him the ball. And this isn't a 180. I think the Broncos are going to be identified as a defensive team. There's an IDP note for you there. Malik Jackson's told me he hopes to get double-digit sacks. Point is, they're going to run the ball and be more balanced, but we saw that last year. And we know Kubiak wants one guy to be the guy. There's, again, another thing floated around, like, well, he'll use 2 backs. No, he won't. If one back is all he needs, if that one back doesn't wear down and can do everything like C.J. Anderson can, then that's the guy that he'll ride out unless the dude gets banged up. And that's what we saw with Arian Foster in Houston. It's what we'll see with C.J. Anderson in Denver. So Demaryius is signed. Peyton and him will get back on the same page, and I'm predicting 100 catches for him. Now the targets will go down for Emmanuel Sanders, as we've said on the show many times. Expect about 75 catches, not 100 catches. And even Emmanuel himself has said that as well. And it doesn't mean Cody's going to blow up. Cody's probably not going to blow up. I'd say 30 catches for Cody, maybe 40, something like that. You're going to see a lot from Owen Daniels. Virgil Green is not the guy that everyone thinks he's going to be. You have offensive line problems. You have a rookie left tackle. You have 4 of the 5 offensive linemen being new starters, Chris Clark being an old starter, but he was replaced. Anyway, point is this. Virgil Green's a blocker. He's going to stand a block. For all the people like, I got the sleeper in Denver, it's Virgil Green, you're wrong. He's at, 25 catches? Virgil Green is an underrated receiver. Matt Waldman's been talking about him for years. He is an underrated receiver, but he's such a great blocker on a team with offensive line problems. He's going to block. The guy to watch out for, and by watch out, I mean he'll catch the same number as Virgil, is James Casey. It's Thor. That's the guy catching passes out of the backfield. Not as much CJ and not as much Owen Daniels as you think. I think James Casey's going to be more involved. We'll see if that unfolds in training camp. But get the Demaryius thing out of the way. Now there's no holdout. There's no drama. And you could easily make the argument, Bloom, that this team is better equipped to win the Super Bowl than in any other year under Peyton Manning because of the defense.
Maybe, and my heart wept a little when you didn't say Joe Don Duncan. I wanted to hear Joe Don. I just wanted to hear that.
He's just going to be fun in the fourth quarter of preseason games.
Exactly. Yeah. This again, Evan Silva, like a month ago or more, planting the seed in my head of preseason DFS. Yeah, that's the new frontier. Joe Don Duncan, watch out for him. So Cease, before you came on, we were playing a little game here, and we'll pass this one around because Doug Farrar kind of opened the conversation on this today with a great article about Peyton Manning, basically asking the question of whether Peyton Manning's decline is inevitable at this point. And what we were doing is just asking. One person would toss out a team, we'd ask the most burning question coming out of that team's training camp, and then another person would give their best attempt at answering that question. But I'm just going to let you answer this question first, Cease. I mean, is Peyton Manning, what we saw last year, was it more, hey, he was hurt, just like any other player. If he's hurt, he's not going to be himself. Come on. Or was it really the beginning of, hey, it's going to happen. We're going to go through a really awkward time in the NFL over the next 3-5 years where we're going to watch Brady and Manning and Breeze and Eli and Roethlisberger and Rivers. I mean, all good things must come to an end. Is it starting now for Peyton?
I think we're beginning to see the start of it, but for the people saying like he's washed up, again, there's some wrong narratives, some misconceptions out there about Peyton Manning. He was hurt in Week 11 against the Rams. He played the rest of the year, and stubbornly, I might add. And you're banged up, you get the quad injury officially, where some people think he may have pooped his pants against San Diego. It's the cleanest, sorry, Joe, it's the cleanest way I can say it. But in that contest, take him out, put in Brock, let Brock play against the Bengals, which was a loss. Remember, Jeremy Hill's, I got a championship thanks to Jeremy Hill that week. And then play the Raiders the next week, which you won. You can win that with Brock, and you could lose the Bengals game with Brock. They should have given him what would have been 3 weeks rest going into the playoffs against the Colts, where obviously everybody was checked out. Del Rio was checked out. Gase was checked out. Fox had already leaked it to his buddy Jay Glazer, like, I'm out of here. So the whole playoff disaster, it's not the true narrative with the Denver Broncos. And watching Peyton Manning, again, mini camp, no pads, I know. But I'm looking at velocity. I'm looking at footwork. It is a bit odd. He did fall a few times taking snaps from under center, and he worked almost exclusively from under center. There was 1 week of minicamp where he never took a snap out of the shotgun or the pistol. So they're really trying to see where he's comfortable at in working from under center. Footwork's fine, of course. Accuracy and velocity is about 40 to 50. I think 55 yards is pushing it, but how many times are you going to throw that way with Peyton Manning? A lot of this is going to be shorter passes, underneath stuff, Owen Daniels, the patented wide receiver screen, of course, to Demaryius Thomas. So can he do that, and can he hand off, play balanced offense? And when you have a defense that is going to thrive, this isn't go Peyton, do everything like in 2013 with 55 touchdowns. This is, okay, Peyton, now you just have to be more of a game manager, and that makes him in the fantasy lens more of quarterback 10 than quarterback 1.
Well, and that you led into my question for Waldman perfectly, because it sets up an interesting proposition. You nailed it, Cease, when you gave us that one piece of information that he was hurt in Week 11 last year, right? So if you look at the fantasy standings at quarterback through Week 10, last year Peyton Manning was number 2 behind Andrew Luck, but he was only about 1.3 points off of his pace in 2013, which made him almost no-brainer in most leagues, most typical leagues, first-round pick, Waldman. So you can get him in the 4th or 5th round now, where he was a first-round pick in 2013, value, was basically doing that for the first 10 games before he got hurt. So he's brought up some important concerns about the changes in the offense, but is this a value staring at us with him falling that far? If it is indeed the injury and not decline that caused what we saw last year?
If it's that condition, then I would say it's a value. Right now, I think he's a very safe player. He's a safe quarterback. He's still one of the safest quarterback ones, I think, available, and I agree with Cecil with the way he's looking at projections. I mean, I have Thomas at 90 instead of 100, but, to me, he's at a 1,400-yard double-digit player. I have Emmanuel Sanders on the dot at 75 receptions for about a little under 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. Latimer at about 35 receptions, and then you can divvy up another 15 receptions to the other receivers in that lineup. And I have Daniels at about, it's probably going to be Casey. As Cecil's saying about Casey, that's something worth noting. Right now, I have Virgil Green. I have Virgil Green at about 30 receptions. Owen Daniels at about 48. But I would probably look at that Casey idea, and if Casey can stay healthy, and what we saw with him with Kubiak in limited time, when you can go back to that really nice New Orleans game that he had early in the season a number of years ago. And you could see the potential where he could end up being more of a 30, 35 catch guy in this offense. Virgil Green, you have to knock that down to probably somewhere between 8 to 12 receptions. So when you add all that up, I see Peyton Manning still as a guy that you can put somewhere in the 4,500 yard range if everything works out the way that where it's not a health issue, and also whether or not this offensive line. If the offensive line is struggling on the ground because of some of the issues that it's had, then you could see where they might have to lean more on Manning. But I anticipate that C.J. Anderson is going to have a big year, and then Manning is going to be able to work off of that just fine. And if Matt Schaub can be somewhere between the top 3 and top 8 quarterback under Kubiak with when he was actually playing well, I think you can expect the same from an older Peyton Manning.
And chances are, it's funny because on one hand, with Drew Brees, I would say to bet the under and bet on more of a decline in stats, at least. Maybe not necessarily in play, because his play was really rough last year at times. But stats, where Peyton, we might say bet the over, but that's assuming that we're already putting in a healthy 15% reduction at least in the size of the pie, just because of the nature of the team slowing down the offense and not being the foot.
Yeah, if you switch the quarterbacks, I would much rather have Brees right now. But
right.
if you take the offense and what you have in there, Manning's still probably going to outproduce. He, like you say, is a better bet to probably outproduce Brees right now.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, I wanted to jump in, Bloom. Sorry for interrupting. I didn't bring up in the Demaryius thing about the 5-year deal. It's essentially a 3-year deal. Last 2 years they can cut him with no loss there. The Brock Osweiler era, I talked to Andrew Mason yesterday, DenverBroncos.com, @MaceDenver on Twitter. He said no one has more to lose in the preseason than Brock. I have been told by people around the team, not Mace, but other people around the team, that if Brock Osweiler has a good preseason, they're extending him. He's the future. If you're in a dynasty league and he's floating out there for nothing, you get him now because you have weapons around him already in place, and you could easily make the argument with his size, with his arm strength, this is a Joe Flacco ripoff, essentially. And Gary Kubiak loved working with Flacco last year. Flacco was very efficient as a passer with the weapons that were more limited. He didn't have a Demaryius Thomas to work with. He didn't have an Emmanuel Sanders to work with. So I just wanted to also note that about Oz, since we're talking Broncos quarterback. Manning's got a $21 million cap number next year. Now, they can't trade him per the trade clause that was just put in this year, but they can release him, and they could just move forward with Oz. There was a thinking that this was going to be Oz's year anyway, and that thinking changed when Manning accepted his pay cut.
Right, but as you said, we won't talk about the trades, but the no-trade clause may be a little telltale sign that there was some fire to the smoke. So extension talk is interesting, too. And I want to bring up one last – we're going to fade off into the sunset here after one last pass round here. Again, 2 hours. We'll be getting back to 2 hours very soon, as there's going to be more than 2 hours of things to talk about every Thursday. But on the subject of teams trying to be smart and extend players, quarterbacks, before the market is going to drive their price up. Like, you don't want Osweiler to get to free agency, because if he gets to free agency and the market sets his price, the Broncos are going to have to go higher than they want to go. I saw something, we haven't talked about this on the show. Nick Foles. There was an item a few weeks back that the Rams may try to sign Nick Foles to an extension, $12 to $14 million a year, $20 million guaranteed. And again, if Foles goes out and plays like 75% of 2013 Foles, or maybe 10% better than 2014 Foles, that'll look pretty good. Harmon, what is your initial response to the idea? If you saw that tomorrow, Foles signed to 4-year, $48 million deal with $20 million guaranteed, would you say, good move, Rams, or what are you doing?
Woof. That would be my...
Charlie?
No, I'm never. I just don't. I can't get behind these contracts, no matter how good they look compared to the high-end markets of contracts where you end up tying yourself to a mediocre quarterback who I don't think is your answer, and I think that's what that would be if the Rams went down that avenue. So I would not be a fan of that deal. I think that it's better to just keep looking and keep cycling through guys that are as good as Nick Foles instead of settling with one for fear that you might land on something worse. And I understand it's easier to say that, sitting off on the sidelines here in my reasonably comfortable LA apartment, but other than not being a Rams GM, but I would say you just keep cycling, because I think you can get that production from other quarterbacks that you don't have to commit that money to.
Austin Davis. Cease, if you squint just right, can you see why the Rams would want to give him $20 million guaranteed?
No, not at all. Not with Nick Foles and not what he's shown so far, but this is Jeff Fisher. And I think we all have a healthy respect for Jeff Fisher, each one of us in this conversation, but it reeks of desperation. It reeks of grasping it, and I'm going to reunite the band. Well, you don't have Steve McNair. You have Nick Foles, dude. You got to get it straight. And next year's draft class is, and you look forward to some of the quarterbacks that could be coming out. I like Dak Prescott a lot. So maybe that's the answer. But again, how much longer does he have by cementing themselves in this another quarterback that's not good overall? I think it's disastrous for the Rams. And again, Fisher to me just seems desperate when I read and commented on that story.
So, Waldman, give us something, anything to hang our hat on here with Foles, or are we really just left to say that, this is a disaster, the plane's about to run into the mountain?
I would say it's an improvement from last year, but when I hear this, what I think to myself is that there must be some sort of lead-based paint in the offensive meeting room, because when in the St. Louis facility, because whoever walks into that building over the past 20 years, their football IQ seems to drop several digits. And I just think that that's what goes on with this offense. I mean, they're building a nice defense. You certainly see why even with the running game, you could even question it to an extent. I mean, I believe it was Justin Howe of Football Guys having a conversation off air last night talking about Zach Stacy. And no, Zach Stacy is not Todd Gurley. But Zach Stacy is a type of player that you go, unless there was something that Stacy did that the media is not aware of, you would say, why did they pick Trey Mason? And then they have Trey Mason, and then you think to yourself, okay, I understand why you picked Todd Gurley. But it's just kind of one of those deals where you could even just say, go back 2 years and say you had somebody with Zach Stacy and continue to kind of build around that. But it seems like that with this team, Jeff Fisher has never really done a great job building an offense except when he had Mike Heimerdinger. And Mike Heimerdinger struck me as the type of guy that, and I think Cecil would probably know better than I would, because I think Heimerdinger's been in Denver.
Yeah, he's in Denver, yep.
Yeah, Dinger reminded me more of, like, I won't say he's the Buddy Ryan of offenses, but he had that kind of, he struck me as a kind of a more fiery, I'm going to do my thing, and if you don't like what I'm doing, I'm going to get back in your face and fight you tooth and nail until we come to some sort of accord with this, rather than being some kind of soft shoe guy who's just going to go, yes, sir, boss, I'm going to do whatever you tell me. And I think that Jeff Fisher's type of, the way Jeff Fisher imposes his will on offenses kind of dumbs things down way too much, and it also comes with how they pick players.
Yeah, it's like a house where they never put a refrigerator or stove or anything in the kitchen, and Jeff Fisher just keeps getting a bigger swimming pool. It's like, great, great pool parties, but we can't cook any food. We don't have any place to put the drinks to keep them. Everyone's hungry and thirsty, and you're throwing a party that we can't enjoy.
Jeff Fisher yelling, "Cannonball!"
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that his hair game. What do you think of his hair game, Matt?
I want to be on you.
Yeah.
Who am I talking about? Jeff Fisher or Cecil?
Jeff Fisher's hair game.
I'm impressed with his mustache game. I'm jealous of that, considering that is by far the weakest part of the hair that I've got going on here. So I'm jealous of that, but he's definitely got, just typical old man hair. Like, get out of the shower, throw it around, and put some hairspray and it lands somewhere.
So, and as we're about to go, I want to get folks to look this up. Hold on, let me see if I can get this picture here, okay? Because I have an idea for you and your brand, Mr. Harmon.
Oh, God.
Yeah, this is gonna be good. I want to, and thank you, Matt Waldman, for teaching me some of this Google toolbox.
Can somebody boot Waldman from the Hangout?
Oh, this is gonna get even better. This is gonna get even better. If I can make this work, this is gonna get even better.
It's all out of love, man. It's all out of love.
I know. I was gonna say, when Cecil first came in, this podcast went really professional for a minute. Bloom got up, started doing the football guys reads. Waldman sat up. I kind of turned a little here.
I know. I was laughing because you look like your hair game meter went like this when you saw Cecil pumping iron.
Well, I was. It was mostly jealousy.
The meter went.
Okay. Let me see if I can get this now. Okay, so this is the idea.
Maybe just went.
So you have. Oh man. Let that sit out there. Whew. So you have the hair game again. I mean, the hair game is going to follow you, and we're eventually going to have a hair off with you and Denny Carter. That's that's like the ultimate. It's like if it was WrestleMania 1, fantasy football WrestleMania 1. That'd be like one of our.
Just do it before I lose my hair, because that is going to happen eventually.
Well, it's happening.
I don't have.
Here, look at that. I mean, you can actually see it's right there. The male pattern baldness is coming in. See, this is perfect. Because I know, just like the spray paint that clings to your hair, kind of. So you have another angle here, because you have hair game, but you also have facial hair game. And I did see something that someone did with. This is the new NFL.com fantasy analyst. Now I'm not sure. I'm not really sure of the name though, so I want to ask everyone out there, if we get a Matt Harmon, Mr. Chinnigan, fantasy analyst, what should we name him? But I do think, think about it. Think about it. See what they think at NFL.com, at the NFL Network. See, I would listen to the Matt Harmon, Mr. Chinnigan. So I'm sorry. That was just I've been working on that idea. I really think that it's something the fantasy industry really needs. So.
That's like Deadspin. Which baseball ugly chin is this?
It's kind of like Teen Wolf Harmon kind of going on there, too.
Teen Wolf Harmon, yeah. I could see it. Just let it simmer. Let it simmer. Think about it, because it's your second move. If you do start to lose if that hair game goes south, you got another great hair game. Look for Matt Harmon in the background, folks, in the NFL Network. You'll see him in the newsroom there, unmistakable profile, and eventually, hopefully, we'll see him come to the foreground. The subtext will become the text. Always great to have you visiting us, though. In all seriousness, I mean, it's a testament to everything that Mr. Harmon's been doing that. You will see him not only at Football Guys, but also regularly on NFL.com. And you know where you'll find Matt Waldman. You know where you'll find Cecil Lammy. You know where you'll find Gene Bramall, who will be back here. Jerry. Yeah. Yeah.
He likes it there.
That would be a good story,
it's nice,
to say the least. So thanks, everybody. Again, 9 days. Teams are reporting. Cecil's going to be giving us all the dirt from the Valley. And preseason watch list starts recording next week, so on and so forth.
Yes.
We love it, folks. It's our time of year. We're getting there. We're getting there. The finger in the light socket time is coming. The charge, the voltage of everything being unleashed. So, thank you, everybody. And next week we will be somewhat back to normal, as much as this show can ever be normal. So, everyone, stay classy.